Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of then versus now, looking at two songs from a band and seeing how they evolved, changed, or refined their sounds. Earlier today, we checked out some Oranssi Pazuzu. We're going to continue on with that journey, listening to something off of their 2024 album. The song is called Ikikäärme. Let's dive in and see what they're bringing to the table today. Well, it's still as atmospheric as I expect. I believe that's electronic. It's a synth of some sort. It's tough to catch a phrase on this. I think we're in 6-beat phrases here. A pretty straightforward beat on the cymbal, but the syncopation of the snare around it with those lighter ghost notes and the heavier accent almost gives it a little bit of a breakbeat feel. If it were just more consistent with that syncopation, this massive sound is uninviting. Yeah, okay, continuing on with that theme, that creeps me out. This is a good song for October, for the spooky month. Even the timbre, the sound over here is incredibly sharp. Lots of fuzz and grit on that. Borderline industrial too in that last 30 seconds or so. At least in end results, the process of creating those sounds, probably more digital than most industrial artists would go. almost half of the track length to get into the metallic element. Massive sounds though, tons of clipping going on there. There's a glitch element going on the vocals too, right? It's cutting in and out rapidly. So I think that last section was in 15/16. Y'all can correct me on that. Just a hair bit longer than 7/4. That offbeat, very unsettling. I want that note to change to anything else at this moment. Cool. Just a full minute. Oh, okay, not a full minute. What are we going to do this last 30 seconds? Well, I cranked it up on my side quite a bit, and there was a nice harmonic overtone. Very quiet there at the end, but Literally 15 seconds of silence on this track? Uh, uh, okay, Oranssi, you do you. Uh, not. Well, here's the other thing too. What does this feel like in the album? Maybe this is a really poignant moment of self-reflection for this silence to exist for so long. Having listened to whatever tracks came before this one and having this pause before we continue on to the album. So maybe that's just something that doesn't make a lot of sense from a single song listen. Interesting ending there, though. This song is heavily focused on atmosphere. It's focused on discomfort and eeriness and general creepy, spooky elements as well, and it merges the two of these sides together rather well by focusing on unconventional sounds, mixing with eerie melodic lines and harmonies. Basically, the stuff that we can attribute musical theory to, it's focusing on the darker elements of that, and the sounds and textures and stuff that I normally relate more to production or electronic music, less about music theory. That's the stuff where they go as unique, abstract, and inhuman as possible. The sounds are frequently not anything that would be created with acoustic instrumentation. That's not to say that you couldn't eventually start with, an acoustic guitar or a piano and eventually wind up at some of these sounds, but that you're not really going to achieve them realistically without the use of digital effects. And I'm counting electric effects in there too, pedals and amplifiers and stuff like that, effects pedals. That's all, that's what I'm talking about. You're not going to get anything acoustic to sound like this. Not naturally, anyways. And that's what makes a lot of this song feel very alien and antagonistic to me, because half of it I don't have a theoretical framework for. It is just sounds that are not common anywhere. It's not even like they're not common in music. They're not common in life. These are the types of sounds you would find in monster movies when they want to create a unique or interesting sonic component to a monster. Something to make them feel more foreign and alien to our everyday life. And they made a song where that is half of it. And of course, the foreign element of that pairs really well with the indistinguishable, not indistinguishable, the undeniable eeriness of the song harmonically. The chords chosen, the notes and the melodies that go along with the chords, you can't ignore this. This is just creepy, unsettling music from start to finish. And I think it does a great job of pairing these together to enforce this atmosphere that feels like fear of the unknown or something along those lines. It is definitely focusing on an uncomfortable feeling due to a lack of knowledge, a lack of familiarity, maybe even. And the song does this consistently from start to finish. There's always some strange sounds going on and some spooky atmosphere that it's put within. And it does a great job of exploring that through a couple of different styles and sections. From the beginning, we have something a bit lighter and moodier, but once we get to the midpoint, it brings in something different. We get these really big distorted guitars. At least I assume they're guitars. I honestly have no idea what they are. The levels of modification, production, and effects put on these instruments, they're separating the end result sound so far from the original timbre that honestly they could be any instrument and wind up at this point. There's just so much processing put on the sound. And it takes that feeling of eeriness, of spookiness, of general discomfort, mixes it with the alien sounds and produces a combination of the two that ultimately, to me, moves away from discomfort into dread. This is downright scary. Every bit of this feels like a presence crushing down on you. It is a palpable fear in the air. The tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. It's no longer, tiptoeing carefully. It's, oh God, this is my tomb. This is where I died today, huh? We've kind of shifted from one level of discomfort to a new level, amplifying the intensity of the section. And I love how they kind of do that in a metallic way, running sounds through distortion. And these sounds are so big. There's clipping, there's destruction to them. It almost feels like they're wavering too, as if whatever they use to capture these sounds isn't quite powerful enough to contain them, and as if the sound waves themselves are trying to break free of the file of the headphones. They're just too strong. Feels like they're in constant flux, which is absolutely bonkers. I had mentioned that the vocals that come in here too, they sound like they're wavering as well, cutting in and out, not completely, but there's a micro movement of volume in there. And what's interesting is that it lines up with the guitars, and it almost sounds as if there's competing sound waves that are so loud and so powerful that they're not canceling each other out, but they're forcing the sounds here to all warble themselves. There's so much clashing of physical waves here that it's causing more distortion and sonic movement in the final sound of all of this. It is bonkers just how much I think the production plays into this track. There are chord progressions that are incredibly useful in this song to set the mood, to set the scene. And we do have a melody in here. There's not a lot. The vocals, the clean vocals we get do have, I guess they're distorted cleans. Anyways, there is pitch to them, and they do follow a bit of a melody at times, but everything else is focusing on texture above any other component. This is a song that wants to set an atmosphere for you, and you're going to feel it. You can't ignore it. This isn't one of those songs you just jam along to and not really, emotionally digest. No, you're understanding this track from start to finish. It is going to make you feel uneasy or in a place of unease, or at least listening to something spooky. You can't deny that vibe. And the animosity that comes across in that metallic section to induce that level of dread is so palpable. It's interesting then to compare this to yesterday's track. What was that called? Not yesterday's track, earlier track today. Cometa, which also focuses heavily on atmosphere and negative emotions in general, but that one hyper focuses on a more traditional black metal delivery. Lots of 16th note picking from the guitars, that rhythmic consistency, and a lot of harmonic tension and dissonance, going for more of that avant-garde type of harmonic writing. This, though, at least the parts that are more traditionally discussed in music theory, follows pretty conventional functional harmony. The chords in here are There's nothing obscure about them or obtuse. They're very clearly eerie and unsettling, and the chord progressions are as I would expect them to. This certainly falls under functional harmony. But it's the production side of things here that completely change everything rather than being a song that I have any sort of foundation for. I mean, yes, or not the earlier track we checked out, Cometa, that's a black metal track. It's a little different, but so much of that black metal foundation is there. I can understand that song. This is entirely experimental, though. I don't have much of a framework for this at all. The drums I can follow along with, but everything else it's sonic assault. It's about the timbres of these foreign sounds. It's not so much about melody, the harmony, big thing right there, but it's also very surface level. And rhythmically, there's not a lot of that going on in here either. We have an interesting, wants to be a breakbeat, but doesn't fully commit to the driving intensity of its drum part that's consistent through the entire track. But other than that, there's not really a sense of a beat or a groove anywhere in here. Notes just kind of happen throughout most of this. There's also the oddity of the time signature that at the beginning of the song, I was like, I don't even know what the phrasing is here. I don't have a sense of home. I can find the general elements of loops. I can hear that wow, wow, like that gives me some sort of temporal loop. I know when it starts and I know when it ends, and then the gap of silence and it starts again. But without really a strong element of a beat there, it's kind of tough to figure out what's happening. My best guess is still 7, but closer to the end of the track, I thought we had returned to the 7, or maybe we were still in the 7, but it feels just a little too long. Whenever we got to the 7 and I started to count 1 in my head, felt like I was rushing. I always got to 1 before them. That's why I think that maybe they were in 15/16, which isn't completely unconventional. I've even played sections in 15/16 before, but it is not common. I think I've only played in that time signature once or twice. Prog metal likes to play with it often because it's 4/4 minus a quarter of a beat or minus a 16th note. It's easy to conceptualize, but it's not commonly used. I'd say it's maybe one of the more common odd time signatures, if that makes sense. But I'm kind of sure that that's what they're doing there. And so even that right there is kind of tough for me to follow along with the beat and groove at that moment. It kind of thrown me off. Is this 7? Is this 15? I wasn't really sure. And to this moment, I would not bet money on either one. I'm not confident in, I know it's one of those, but I'm not confident in which one. And so, like I said, there isn't really a beat or a groove to follow along with this. There's a general rhythmic pulse to everything, and there is a consistent phrasing, but it's kind of obscured behind the lack of driving rhythm throughout this. Notes just kind of happen. And it's more about the textures of those notes than any sort of melodic or rhythmic quality either. It's the interesting sounds that they're presenting here. And so we have a song that feels way more experimental than the one we checked out earlier, but very much in the same vein. I mean, that one also a type of avant-garde metal too, but it just felt less, I should say more restrained. That felt more metal with a bit of an experimental edge to it. This is just experimental music that happens to be loud and abrasive like metal is. So it's interesting to sort of see them start off from a more conventional area while still being quite unconventional. And at least at this point in this song, taking that foundation and making their own sound out of it. Very interesting to compare these two tracks. Let me hit some lyrics on this one. I don't know if I'd necessarily call this entirely foreign. I was kind of expecting more chaotic lyrical ideas, but it's certainly not. I don't think a lot of people are going to experience something like this. Um, Unconscious, numb, handless, and soulless, a flaw in endless time, eternal serpent. So we have this idea of a snake, handless, but also soulless, unconscious, and numb. The eternal serpent makes me both think that it is immortal, but also reminds me of the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, which also is a flaw in a sense. It says it does not wither, but it eats. I follow the fire cave. Reptile, reptile, follow, and lava flows. Flashbacks, flashbacks, lava flows, follow. In the vestibule of eternity, a snake swallows me, a tunnel of guts. I don't really get the lead up to that. The fire cave, the lava, the flashbacks, I don't know. But being swallowed by the snake is where, at least on the surface level, I start to understand a little bit here. It says I melt into the walls, into bones, and my arms are sticky with the surface of the acid lake rising. It covers my body, and I will never be alone again. Memories dissolve into the air. My head was cloudy from flakes of thought bubbles. Sensations slipped before me. The light faded, and my tongue dried up into a huge, scaly skin. I wrapped myself. My lap was cool and slippery. It seems that through this, they have transformed into a snake themselves. And that through this transformation, after metaphorically being consumed by this snake, that their head cleared up, said it was cloudy, and memories have dissolved. They don't remember anything, but they have a clarity of intentionality, maybe, of thought, but also maybe this is part of the cycle. Maybe they now are unconscious and numb, soulless. Maybe that's where the clarity of mind comes from. It says that my mind was cloudy from flakes of thought bubbles. Well, if you're not thinking anymore, the brain probably seems pretty clear. They lost their memories in this process as well. I don't know what all of this is supposed to figuratively be about, though. And Ikikäärme translates to eternal serpent. So that's really the core of this. Is there some sort of mythology about an eternal serpent that I'm not familiar with, particularly maybe even a Finnish mythology? But is this about the Ouroboros? And if so, what am I missing to understand this? I mean, there is certainly a cycle here. The eternal snake eats this narrator. The narrator becomes a snake, and presumably due to the cycle of all of this, the cyclicality and the eternality, the eternal aspect of it, I'm going to assume that they're going to eat someone else too. But maybe the snake and the narrator have always been one and the same. I don't know. I'm a bit lost on this, but there is something quite haunting about this entire metamorphosis, some sort of disgusting transformation here. Not just physically, which there is definitely that, but mentally too. Almost as if the thoughtlessness is welcomed. Again, I don't know what all of this means, but I can certainly feel that it's not a good thing based off of all the music that is paired with it. However, these are just my thoughts on Ikikäärme's, no, on Ikikäärme by Oranssi Pazuzu. Let me know what you thought of this track, though. Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own perspective, opinion, or take on this? Please put all of that and anything else you'd like to add into the comments section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. We'll continue on with this week's theme. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.